Kansas City Sports Update Studios. Welcome to Kingdom Radio, where we talk about all things Kansas City Chiefs. Brought to you by Arrowhead Update. Join Chris and Richard on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Player FM, CastBox, and all third-party applications. Check us out on Facebook platforms such as Kansas City Sports Update and Arrowhead Update. And if you cannot find us there, Google or search Kingdom Radio and Kansas City Chiefs, and you will find us. Welcome to the Kingdom. Kingdom.
Good evening, Chiefs Kingdom. This is Chris Chavez with you guys tonight. Richard's going to be off tonight. He's got some stuff he's got to handle. Anyways, I'm going to give you guys a real quick recap of the Kansas City Chiefs Oakland Raiders game, in which Kansas City Chiefs came out victorious 40-9, and the game wasn't even that close, you guys. For those of you guys who ended up missing it, or as most of Chiefs Kingdom ended up having to experience, if you got blacked out in the second half of the game by CBS, the Chiefs ended up pulling that one out rather handedly. So to begin off the game, the Oakland Raiders started out slightly moving the ball. Derek Carr ended up throwing a interception to Tyrann Mathieu at the Kansas City Chiefs 48-yard line. That was returned to the Oakland 47. The Chiefs drove down rather methodically and ended up putting it in on a 3-yard pass from Patrick Mahomes to Darrell Williams, in which it was more of a screen pass, and he ended up just bowling over to the outside of the pylon to get in for the touchdown. On the ensuing kickoff, the Raiders ended up fumbling it. Rashard Fenton caused the fumble when he met the ball carrier, and he just dropped it. Unfortunately for the Chiefs, though, that didn't turn into any points. They ended up going for it on fourth and extremely short. And this is probably one of the few bad calls by Andy Reid on the night. It was just a really bad play call in which Damian Williams went left of the guard to the Oakland 15, and he just didn't get any yards there. I was kind of expecting something a little bit more creative rather than just straight up the middle, which was not really our strong point in the game, at least not with Darrell Williams. We ended up having a series of punts back and forth between Oakland and Kansas City. And then the Raiders had their own attempt on fourth and one at the Kansas City 40-yard line. And again, just Kansas City was able to shut them down, and they weren't able to get enough yards for the first down. Kansas City then turned around and ran it in for a touchdown, in which Patrick Mahomes from 13 yards out dropped back for a pass, and nobody was open. And he decided to scramble it up, and again, nobody left their marks, and Patrick just pretty much walked in for the touchdown. And then on the following drive, the Raiders again do what Raiders do, and Derek Carr threw an interception to Juan Thornhill, in which he just undercut the route and picked him off and returned the ball 46 yards for a touchdown, which was a beautiful pick six. It was Thornhill's first touchdown of the season, first touchdown as a Chief, first touchdown as a pro, which was fantastic to see. He and Honey Badger really came together over the last couple of weeks and have really put it together. They're talking, they're communicating with the other corners, and definitely paid off for Thornhill in the game last night. Raiders came down and ended up missing a field goal. And if you guys remember seeing I can't remember his first name, but Vanderjack, the kicker for the Indianapolis Colts many years ago, back when Peyton Manning was still the quarterback, he shanked a couple kicks just extremely far right, far left. And this kick by the Oakland Raiders kicker was just about that bad. Carlson I don't know if you could have blindfolded yourself and been spun around 3 times and been told, okay, go kick the ball. I don't think you could have missed it much more than he did. It was an atrocious try. And then Chiefs came down and didn't really do much with the ball. They ended up getting 3 plays out of it, and then they punted it. And then on the tackle of the return, that ended up being the play, or the end of the half, or excuse me, the end of the first quarter. So that was pretty much it. And then coming out of the half, the Chiefs drove down, got a field goal. And again, Oakland's doing absolutely nothing with the ball. And at this point in the game, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here, you guys. I'm sorry. At this point in the game, Derek Carr has completed 1 pass to a wide receiver. I believe it was to Zay Jones. And it wasn't really until late in the third quarter, that he really started hitting other wide receivers. The Chiefs secondary was doing a fantastic job of taking away the running routes of the wide receivers and keeping them covered, to the point that Derek Carr just didn't feel comfortable throwing them the ball. Kansas City ended up getting the ball after Oakland's punt, and they drove down to the Oakland 3-yard line. And this is where Shady ends up taking the run, or taking the ball and running it in for a touchdown. And at this point, the Chiefs are up 31-0, and you've got to be feeling really good about this game, pretty much being in hand, because everything you've seen up until this point, it really tells you that the Oakland is just playing dead. Really, they've got nothing to come back at you with. But they came down and they kicked a field goal to bring it extremely close to the 31-3. Made KC start to sweat a little bit. And then on the ensuing drive, the Andy Reid decided to give the ball to Darwin Thompson, who, those of you guys who listen to our pregame show, you heard us talk a lot about this kid, about the potential of what he could bring. And unfortunately, just before this drive, CBS switched the game over to the Chargers-Broncos game, so a lot of you guys probably missed this. But Darwin Thompson, I think, only sat out 1 play of this entire drive, and he pretty much carried it almost the entire time. And I want to say he ended up having 11 carries on the drive. And you got to see a lot of his potential. We didn't really get to see a lot of him in open space, but his quickness, his strength, his agility was very much on show during this drive. I believe it was his first or second carry of this drive. He ends up leaping a guy, and absolutely just like we saw in preseason, he jumped over a guy to get some extra yards. He was running with power. I don't think I ever saw him actually fall backwards on this entire drive. He was always falling forward, which was fantastic to see. And when the Chiefs were at the Oakland 4-yard line, Darwin ended up getting the call, ran it just off the right guard, and he got hit, and he's being held by his foot. I want to say it was about the 2-yard line, and watching him struggle out of that tackle and push forward was tremendous to see, because you got to see his strength and his drive. And if you watch the replay, you can kind of see an offensive lineman kind of give him a little bit of an extra push or pull into the end zone. But when you look at the physics of it, that was all Darwin. Darwin absolutely pushed through, or pushed out of and pushed into the end zone on that one. And it was tremendous to see how the entire team rallied around the kid. and it celebrated with him for his first touchdown as an NFL pro. And on a side note, just that morning, I think Darwin Thompson had gotten a call from his former running backs coach, who's now an O-line coach back in high school. His head football coach from high school had passed away just that morning, and he had gotten the call. And so whether he wants to admit it or not, I think that he was playing with a lot of emotion in yesterday's game, and definitely showed and paid off for him because he ended up coming out with a touchdown. He also ended up being the Chiefs' leading ball carrier and yard gainer yesterday, with 11 carries for 44 yards and the touchdown. On the following possession, the Raiders brought it down, and this was probably their best drive of the entire game for two reasons. One being it's garbage time. The Chiefs are already up 38 to 3 at this point, and we just want to get out of the game with no injuries. Everybody get out healthy, and let's see what we can do. And this is where Carr started to really put together a decent drive, and he ended up throwing for a touchdown to Derek Carrier, and so that brought the Raiders to 40-9. And this is where things get really exciting, more so than it has been already, because already this has been a great game. But on the field goal attempt, K-Pass breaks through the line and blocks the punt. He gets picked up by Charvarius Ward, who runs it back for a 2-point try. And so the Chiefs get 2 free points on this deal, and it's 40-9. Now, this is significant because this is the first time and I want to say it's about 30 years, but I could be wrong on the time there. But 30 years since the Raiders have lost back-to-back games by 30 or more points. And I mean, you think about all of the bad Raider teams over the course of the years, and for them to never have lost by 30 or more points in back-to-back games, that's kind of surprising. But the fact that the Chiefs were able to do this against the Raiders, as well as essentially end their season. And this is another point that I want to make, is that the Chiefs have now ended the seasons of the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Raiders. Because in order for the Raiders to have any shot of winning the division and making the playoffs, they have to overcome a 3-game deficit, because the Chiefs now hold a 2-game lead over them, as well as the third game, which is the tiebreaker, because we have beaten them twice this season. So we essentially hold a 3-game lead over them for the division. And at 6-6, there's almost no way for them to really get into the wild card. There's a chance, but it's an extremely slim chance. And while we're talking about history, something happened last night for the Kansas City Chiefs that hasn't happened in 45 years, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to repeat that. 45 years. The Kansas City Chiefs went the entire game without being called for a single penalty. That's right. 45 years worth of games, no penalties called in this game. It's only happened in 2 other games prior to last night. And I was able to hear the announcers end up saying that Andy Reid, Bieniemy, and the coaching staff worked over the entire bye week with these guys on their discipline and not committing stupid penalties. It definitely paid off, and it was great to see these guys really pull it together. So to talk about some standout players that we had, on defense, we had Chris Jones and K-Pass, who both ended up being tied for the team lead in total tackles with 5. Chris Jones and K-Pass both had sacks and both had a tackle and a half for loss. But Chris Jones was absolutely a force up the middle, and he was a one-man wrecking crew really on the defensive line to disrupt Derek Carr and constantly get him looking down as opposed to his wide receivers. K-Pass absolutely doing the exact same thing, being disruptive and getting his opportunities to make Derek Carr adjust his throws. And on the flip side, and this doesn't really show up in the box score at all, but the fact that Derek Carr through 3 quarters only completed 1 pass to a wide receiver is a huge testament to the coverage by our secondary. Our corners, our safeties were doing a great job of shutting down the wide receivers. And while we had a great game in the passing game, on the rushing side, I'll give the Raiders this. They had their running game on point yesterday. Josh Jacobs ran for 104 yards. On 17 carries, he had a 6.1 average, and I believe he had 100 yards by the half. And you normally hear that a team has a 100-yard rusher by the half, you expect them to be up. The Raiders didn't even have any points in the first half. And so, while yes, our run game or our run defense still isn't that great, here's the thing, you guys, is that when you can control the run game and shut down the passing game, the opposing team is going to be far less likely to have points on the board or to beat you, especially when you can put up points as quickly as the Chiefs can and the way that we do. And so it was a great game plan for the Chiefs to not necessarily focus in on the run game as much as we have in the past with, let's say, the likes of Minnesota, where we were able to absolutely shut down Dalvin Cook. Our defense is good enough that we can shut these guys down. I just don't think that we have seen a complete defensive domination yet this season. I feel that we can, and that I feel that it's coming, and I would be really excited to see this happen on Sunday against the Patriots, but I don't know if we're necessarily there yet. I think it's still coming, but everything that I've seen so far this season tells me that we have the ability. We've shut down the passing game against teams. We've shut down the running game against teams. Now we just need to really dial it in and do both. On the flip side, on offense, Patrick Mahomes had a rather pedestrian stat day. And you take into consideration the weather conditions at Arrowhead with gusty winds. I mean, it drastically adjusts your throws. It affects your throws and your accuracy. Patrick Mahomes was 15 of 29. He threw for 175 yards, 1 touchdown. He only took 1 sack, and he also ran the ball 3 times for a total of 25 yards, but he had the 13-yard scamper for a touchdown as well. The one thing I want to say about the Chiefs' offense is that although we didn't put up tremendous running or passing yards, our running game was on point. We had 3 rushing touchdowns yesterday, you guys. 1 by LaShawn McCoy, 1 by Patrick Mahomes, and then another one by Darwin Thompson. And Darwin was absolutely a monster back there. And based on his performance, I'm really hoping that he ends up getting more time and it earns some time away from Darrell Williams, hopefully Damian Williams as well. And I'm okay with he and Shady sharing time. Shady is definitely the more experienced back, and going into the home stretch here of the regular season as well as the playoffs, it's going to be very important for us to have that experience on the field. And I think that also working with Shady is going to really help Darwin Thompson to be able to understand the nuances of the position at the professional level. And so with that being said, you guys, in the passing game, we had two guys who had 5 catches each, Travis Kelce and Cheetah, both of them with 5 catches. Kelce outgaining Cheetah with a longer reception of 47 yards. But Cheetah absolutely had the more pivotal catches, I think, would be a good way of putting it. When we needed him to make a catch or make a big play, he made it. Shady had 3 catches for 20 yards. And then Sherman and Darrell Williams each added in another catch. Sammy Watkins kind of had a bad game. He was targeted 3 times, didn't reel in a single catch. And then McCole Hardman and D-Rob weren't even targeted at all in the game. Moving forward, I would really like to see us get all of our receivers back and involved in the running or in the passing game. D-Rob has pretty much been non-existent for the last 5 to 6 weeks, if not even longer than that. And McCole Hardman, he's had flashes. I would like to see more consistency from him. Travis Kelce, he had a slow start yesterday, but he was able to finally turn things around and start catching the ball. I'd like to see him be a little bit more consistent with those hands. He's, I believe, is 80 yards away from having his 4th consecutive 1,000-yard season. No tight end in the history of the NFL has ever had 4 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. And for Travis Kelce to be 4 games away from having or for being able to meet that mark is huge. And it's definitely a mark that he should be able to meet, barring injury. And, definitely looking forward to this next game against New England here on Sunday night. I think it's going to be a huge matchup, a great matchup for us, player-to-player matchup anyways. We saw a great blueprint by the Houston Texans and the Romeo Crennel defense that they have of how to shut down the Patriots. They've been playing a lot of really easy teams, lesser teams, weaker teams this entire season. And when they faced the Ravens exposed them. When they faced the Texans exposed them. When they played the Chiefs on Sunday night, I have every confidence in my body that they are going to expose them even more. That the Patriots are, to one degree or another, very much like the Dallas Cowboys, in which they can't beat teams that are over 500. Now, granted, the Patriots have played a couple teams that are over 500, but much in that same vein, they're going to struggle to get those wins against these good teams. It's nothing against Brady. It's just he doesn't have the help on the outside at wide receiver that he's had in the past. And I think that their offensive line is very much suspect. And watching him struggle to throw to the wide receivers in the game yesterday, especially with Edelman, and I think that if we can copy that same sort of coverage, I think it's going to be tremendous for us to be able to get that win up there in Foxborough and to get one game closer to getting that 2nd seed in the AFC. At this point, I'm okay with not getting the 1st seed. I want to get the 2nd seed. Because if we can get the 2nd seed and take that away from New England either has to come to KC or they have to go to Baltimore. And I'm okay with if we have to go to Baltimore to get a win. I'm comfortable with that. We've already beat them once this year. We beat them last year. And yeah, they're running high right now because they're playing some really good teams and some really bad weather and blah, blah, blah. We've already beat them once. I've got the confidence that we'll be able to beat them again. I don't think we're going to be seeing a different Lamar Jackson in January than we saw back in September. It's going to be the same guy. It's going to be the same offense. I'm okay with it. And so with that, you guys, I'm going to call it a night. One final thing I want to let you guys know about. Tomorrow night, around, I believe it's going to be 4 o'clock Central Time, we're going to have a very, very special guest on our podcast tomorrow. We're going to be doing an interview with a former Chief legend, so to speak. I grew up having this guy's name in my ear every single time I was watching a Chiefs game, in J.J. Burden. He'll be joining us tomorrow on the show. We're going to be asking him some questions. And yeah, please tune in and listen to our show tomorrow and the interview that we have with him. You guys have a great night, and or depending on when you listen to this, great morning, great day. And we will talk to you guys again next time. Have a good night.